Hi and welcome to my first video for Scrap Academy. Today we are using the prompt or the challenge for this week, which is tools and equipment. So I'm going right back to basics and making a few suggestions for some beginners tools and equipment. If you are a beginner, then hopefully this will be helpful, and if you're a seasoned scrapbooker, then I challenge you to maybe have a look at some of your older layouts and go back to basics and pick out some beginner supplies for you. Obviously beginner supplies, I think there's probably some variation from one scrapbooker to the next, but these are the things that I would definitely recommend to a friend if they were going to start scrapbooking. So the first things, I'm just going to get some things out of the way. So I've got some different adhesives, any type of glue, but just a glue stick is fine. I find a wet glue like a PVA helpful, a double-sided tape and a foam tape to add a little bit of dimension and lift to a layout. Some scissors, kitchen scissors will do, pencils, pens. This is quite a fine tip pen, but a biro would do, or a gel pen or anything like that. A ruler is great. I didn't have a paper trimmer when I very first started, and I just used to tear the paper with a ruler. So yeah, a long ruler is great. Punches, I'm a fan of stars, so I have 2 star punches here, about 1 inch and a TDDR one. But any shapes you can get in these punches, circles, hearts, so they're a great starting point. I love woodblock stamps, not all woodblock stamps, but for lettering. And I think they're a great starting point. This is the first set that I ever had. I've lost 2 of the letters here, look. Oh no. But these are the first ones that I ever had when I first started scrapbooking, and they are just really useful for titles, and now I kind of use them for subtitles and things like that too. Then I have some smaller woodblock stamps here that are lettering stamps again, but these ones are about £1 from the range, and you can get these ones like this off eBay. And then an ink is great. I have a waterproof ink here. If you can believe it, this pad is 8 years old, I think, from my maths. And yeah, it's still going strong. Not as juicy as it once was, but it still works. So they're good investments to make. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. I've got a few kind of little embellishments. I think when you're a beginner scrapbooker, you're kind of drawn to this type of stuff, especially if you're a magpie for shiny things like I am. I've got a few pearls and some gems, and they can be really nice additions to a layout, and they go really nicely with the paper pad that I have here, which I'm going to use. So maybe find a paper pad first and then find some coordinating bits that would go along with it. A photo is obviously important for a scrapbook layout. So this one is printed on a website called Snapfish, or you could print obviously from a home printer. And then I would recommend a paper pad. This paper pad is great because it's really versatile. They come in lots of different price points, so you can select a paper pad that works for your budget. I think a fine print is great. I'd also want a paper pad, this is me personally, but to have some larger prints that would be great for things like borders, like you can see in this example at the top here. And these kind of different shapes like birds, butterflies, houses, they're a bit larger, and you could cut them out and include them as embellishments on a layout. So they're the things that I would look for in any paper pad, even if you don't have this one. It's like not on a requirement to have this paper pad. So I'm going to crack on with the layout now. I'm just going to be using these tools and equipment, so I hope that it's useful to you, so you don't have to have kind of tons of stuff to make a nice layout. Hopefully this is a nice layout. And yeah, I'm just going to crack on. Okay, so I'm just starting by going through my paper pad, and I found this really pretty background paper, and it's just a fine very, very fine polka dot on a sort of I don't know what colour that would be, like a really pale pinky purpley sort of colour. And I'm just going through the paper pad, and I'm just going to find some patterns that I like and that kind of go together. The joy of a paper pad is that most of the patterns are already kind of designed to go together, so most of the hard work is done for you. But I'm just picking out a few of these teal patterns, or like minty tealy colour. Very bad at describing colours. And some pretty ditzy kind of floral prints, and this gorgeous gold foiled one as well. And then I'm just using a pencil and I'm drawing some stars badly onto the back of this card. I'm quite happy with like really rough looking kind of shapes. I don't get obsessed with things like that, but if you prefer things, you know, like you want a star to look like really even, for example in this layout, then you could always use a ruler and kind of measure it and be a bit more precise than I am. But I quite like I was trying to avoid the word slapdash, but I mean, let's be honest, that's perhaps my style, is a tad slapdash. So I've just cut lots of different sized stars. They're quite large and kind of medium sized, I guess, from these different patterns, which are going to form kind of the basis of my layout. And then I'm using this punch, which is around about an inch. It's possibly a bit smaller than that, but and the teeny tiny punch, and I'm just punching out of the leftover scraps of paper from the stars that I cut out. And I'm just kind of leaving them piled up on the paper for now, and I'll kind of organise them in a little while. So here I'm looking through the paper pad and finding some extra embellishments to use. So I am going to use some of these labels, or like banner, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, banners, that's it. And just cutting the ones I want out of the paper pad. So one says like my darling or something like that, and what else do they say? Oh, I can't remember. You'll be able to see them in a minute. But they just say some cute little phrases like that. And then I also thought, because I'm going to be scrapbooking my cat Basil, and he likes to chase birds, that I would include some birds on this layout. So I don't know if that's cute or morbid, but that's the way I went. So I picked out a few colours that I thought were in the pages I'd selected. So I've went for a sort of pink, and then a darker teal colour, really dark teal, which is that one there that I'm now cutting out, and a kind of minty blue. And then I'm just fussy cutting here. So the way that I do it is to move the paper more than I move the scissors. So as I'm cutting, I twist the paper, like you can see me doing with the tail here. And I really enjoy fussy cutting, actually. It can be a really fun therapeutic thing to do while you're watching TV, because it's kind of mindless. It's like creative meditation is fussy cutting, in my opinion. So I don't show you all of this fussy cutting though, because it'd probably be really boring to watch. But I'm also cutting in here an example of one of the banners. So this one says "Wonderful You." There you go. And then I'm going to kind of skip ahead, and I will have cut I think all of these out. And I'm just cutting my photos, and I've got 3 photos that I'm going to use in the layout. These are 3 small photos of the cat. This is Basil, and Oliver's just walked in, so she's probably going to meow at me now. She can be like, why didn't you include me in a layout? Anyway, yeah, where was I? So I've just moved those fussy cut things onto the layout, and then I'm getting a pen here and just doing a kind of doodle border around the edge of some of the stars that were kind of blending into the background a bit too much. So I just picked a few of them. And then here you can see I'm just shifting the layout over to the right, and I did that because when I was kind of laying everything down, I tend to lean to the left for some reason. Like every time I do a layout, I prefer to go to the left hand side, or I naturally seem to go that way. But the photos, all of the photos of the cat, he was looking toward the left, so I felt like the right hand side was better for the photos. So little things like that can, it's not really that important, but I think it helps sometimes the layout to sit better in your mind if you feel like something's wrong. Then just have a look at things like that, like your photo, your subject in your photo and where they're looking. So it looks nicer, I think, for him to be looking into the scrapbook layout rather than off the page. But yeah, might be a pedantic thing, I don't know. So here I'm just adding some double-sided sticky tape behind the larger stars, and this one has got some foam tape on, and I've been kind of roughing up the edges. I did a combination of roughed up edges and left edges, and it's totally up to you and your style as to what you do. I would say I normally don't rough up edges, but I go through phases where I do it more and times when I do it less. I think it just depends on the layout because this is a bit of a rougher layout, like the stars are all kind of mismatched and misshapen, it felt like the right kind of layout for me to rough edges up a little bit. But yeah, I'd say for me scrapbooking is more, it's quite hard to describe exactly what you do, because it's more of a feeling, I would say. Like I feel like something's finished, or I feel like it's not quite right, so I have to fiddle around with it. Here I'm just adding some of the punched stars. So these are like the 1-inch sort of punch stars. I'm sticking a few of them down, and then I realised that this would probably have been better for me to do after I'd stuck my photos down. So I've just backed my photos on a small piece of white card. I happen to have white card. If you didn't have white card, you could always use a colour in the paper pad that you purchased. But I had some scraps of white card left. You could use the back of packaging. You could use a piece of white print paper, for example. And then I'm sticking the photos of the cats down, or the cat down, and I'm kind of I like the 3s and the little clusters of 3, but I needed a space for my title, and I hadn't thought of that before when I first laid them out. So the gap that you can see on the left hand side now, with that kind of floral blue or mint kind of star, that's where my title is going to go. I'm just adding my birds and spacing them out so that the colours are fairly even throughout the layout, and I've added a little banner underneath each of the photos. I've kind of fluffed up the wings a little bit on the birds, and fluffed up the edges of the stars as well, just to give it a little bit of texture. And then I'm just dotting some PVA glue around the edge and sticking down the teeny tiny stars that I cut out as well. I do find as I go through that my layout kind of changes, and I do go through phases where I don't like it. So certainly I think at about this point I was not a fan of this layout at all. I was like, oh god, just doing my head in. But then when you start adding finishing touches, I think I would say don't give up on it. Make sure you've got everything that you ever intended to put on it before you kind of really stop. But then I'm writing the title Sweet Basil. I couldn't think of anything else. It's not the most adventurous title, but he is sweet and his name's Basil. So I'm just stamping that with my woodblock stamps. I think it's hard to get the woodblock stamps straight, so my opinion is embrace the wonky when it comes to stamping letters, and just kind of aim for wonky. Then you can't be disappointed with it. Then I'm going to add a little bit of journaling. I think journaling is important in scrapbook layout, because after all, we're all just trying to tell those kind of stories about our lives. So here I'm just kind of journaling about the photos and how cute he is, and his one of Bill's favourite pastimes at the moment is to take pictures of the cats yawning, and I literally get so many texts of him now, especially now he's been furloughed from work in this whole weird situation, and he just spends his life taking pictures of the cats yawning. Yeah, very interesting. I've just added a little ripped piece of paper that side of the page, because I felt like it needed it to balance it out a little bit, because the layout is very right justified. I felt like I needed to just add a little bit there. I'm just adding the gems and pearls now, and I do kind of skip ahead through this because it is boring to watch, but I am just really aiming for 3s, or triangles really, actually. Visual triangles, groups of 3 and kind of thirds of the page are like visually really nice, so they just always work out. So across the whole layout you're going to see there's almost like a zigzag of these pearls and gems. There I'm just showing you with my finger there, and that's the end of the layout, so I'm finished finally. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next tutorial. Bye.